Every night at 3:33 a.m., a mysterious road always appears near my house. I first noticed it last week on my way home from work. Initially, I just thought it was a driveway I hadn't noticed before, but then I saw a sign with an arrow pointing down the road, saying, "To Deathcap Mountains, 70.9 miles." The words were hand-painted in sharp, angular black script. What caught my attention was that my town has no mountains, nor do any of the neighboring towns or anywhere in that direction. I had never heard of any mountain range with that name, even though I'd hiked most of the trails within a 10-mile radius. But after a 12-hour shift, I decided to keep driving and go home to sleep, promising myself I'd explore this strange road another day. The next morning, I woke up with a scream and violent thrashing. Though this wasn't uncommon for me, this time I knew the dream I'd just had was related to that road. Even when awake, I could still see that sharp black script bleeding onto the ground and those shimmering silver eyes glowing in the woods behind it. The day after, I told Naomi, a coworker of mine, as we walked around the warehouse taking inventory and looking for lost items. Naomi looked like a stereotypical goth, with purple hair and far too many piercings. We used to do urban exploration together, breaking into abandoned asylums and old hospitals. Naomi knew the surrounding areas much better than I did. She was also an expert with crossbows, compound bows, and even air bows, while I had only been target shooting a few times. If there were any secret mountains in the area, Naomi would definitely know. But when I mentioned the Deathcap Mountains, she just frowned. "Jason," she said, "are you sure it wasn't just someone putting up a weird sign at the entrance to spook people? There are definitely no mountains in this area, and I've never heard of any by that name here. My dad has hunted around here for decades and never mentioned that name. If I heard it, I'd definitely remember. I do like the name for a mountain range," she chuckled weakly. I knew Naomi had a superhuman memory, a talent she often displayed at work by simply glancing at a manual for a few seconds and then being able to recite it word for word. In a way, she made me admire her. I couldn't imagine being able to use my memory like a camera, reading and recalling every detail months or even years later. "I don't think so," I said, shaking my head and looking down at my notepad. I had made a point of going back a few times, remembering the exact location of the dirt road, and by around 4 a.m., not only was the sign gone, but the road or anything resembling it was also gone. Something strange is going on there. "Tell you what," she said with a calculating grin. "Tonight, when you get off work, I'll come with you and we'll drive down that road. If it's just a prank or something harmless, you can drive me back. But if not, we'll figure it out together and we'll have a great story to tell." I grimaced. "I'm not sure that's a good idea, Naomi. What if we get lost or the car breaks down with no cell service? What if we have to walk in the middle of the night?" She patted my shoulder reassuringly. "I'll bring my Glock 19 and some extra ammo in case of bears or serial killers. You can pick up some food and water during your lunch break. That way, we'll be fully prepared. Besides, I think you're worrying too much. The chances of everything failing at once are pretty low. We've been to much more dangerous places exploring collapsing mansions or condemned asylums filled with asbestos, and we never had any problems. I think a little dirt road is nothing." "This isn't just a small dirt road," I replied, frowning. "It's a mystery, and it probably didn't just appear naturally." Everything initially went according to plan. Naomi and I usually worked the night shift, starting at 3 p.m. and working until the job was done, whether that was 11:30 p.m. or 4 a.m. Since it was summer and the workload increased, we often got home after 2 or 3 a.m., and tonight was no exception. By the time we drove out of the warehouse, situated right in the middle of the industrial park in Gorham, and headed towards the wooded road in Unity where the strange dirt road appeared, it was already 3:20 a.m. I had to speed to make it in time. From previous attempts, I knew that if I arrived at 3:15 or 3:45, the road wouldn't appear. It only appeared at 3:33 and vanished after a few minutes. We didn't talk much on the way. I had the radio on, listening to a pop song we had both heard thousands of times before. But as we got closer to the mysterious road, the radio started to malfunction, the station breaking up and then going dead. Instead, an unintelligible guttural voice mixed in. Though I couldn't make out much, I caught a few snippets, black-eyed creatures screaming into the void. Then, a few seconds later, it continued. "The light of the dead follows them." I glanced at Naomi, my stomach clenched. The words ended with a shrill, piercing scream, a horrifying metallic clang. Is the radio usually like that around here?" she asked, looking pale in the moonlight. Actually, I hardly ever listen to the radio. If I put anything on, it's usually an audiobook. But in the rare times I've had the radio on, I've never heard that. She turned the volume down. "It's probably just interference from another station," she mumbled, but her voice didn't sound convinced. After a few minutes of silence, she started talking again. "My grandmother disappeared here," she said. I looked over, surprised. She nodded. "She was only 30 then, and my mom was just a baby. My grandparents had a small house in Unity, miles from their nearest neighbor. One night she couldn't sleep, so she went for a walk. They tried to track her, and initially the police dogs picked up a very strong scent, but it led to a cliff face nearly 100 feet high and then stopped. The police never found her body, but a volunteer said they saw a bright-colored hat in the crown of a tree growing out of the middle of the cliff, a place inaccessible without climbing gear. My grandmother, in her beach sandals, couldn't have climbed that herself." The story sent shivers down my spine as we approached the mysterious road. "You think she just got lost and they didn't find her body?" I asked. Naomi slowly shook her head. "I think someone or something took her. The fact that her tracks ended nearby makes me wonder if it has anything to do with that road you keep mentioning." I slowed down as I entered the last curve and glanced at the clock. 3:32 a.m. I purposefully drove slowly, only 10 miles per hour, carefully observing the surrounding woods. When we were only 100 yards from the road, I only saw the angular script on the sign. Nothing else. Unity already had little traffic during the day, let alone in the middle of the night. Still, I put on my hazard lights as I stopped in front of the sign one last time. "I'll turn back here," I said to Naomi. She bit her lower lip, hesitated, then shook her head, not saying another word. I slowly drove onto the dirt road. At first, it was quite normal. Behind the sign, the road wound randomly left and right. I had to weave through large potholes that had been there for years. The moonlight ahead cast an eerie glow on the trees. The scent of pine and moss seeped into the car. "So far, it just looks like a normal road," Naomi said as I maneuvered through another pothole. Further down, the road straightened, and I sped up to over 30 miles per hour. A sense of dread and excitement welled up in my chest, and for a fleeting moment, I wondered why I was out here in the middle of the night. "Normal roads don't just appear and disappear in the middle of the night," I mumbled. "Oh my God, look," Naomi said, pointing to a brightly lit building on the right side of the road. On the front lawn, there was a large, professionally made sign with the words, "Way Station," etched into it. A black Ford Taurus was parked right in front of the sliding glass doors. As I slowed down, I could see the tires were flat, and dirt and leaves covered the car's windows. Its tinted glass made it look like a government vehicle. This way station had large white columns in front of its glass facade, with windows stretching from floor to ceiling. Bright white light illuminated the dark concrete parking lot. Behind the columns, on the far left and right, deep red recessed walls rose to a sloped roof with 2 Victorian-style turrets on each side. "This place can't possibly exist here," Naomi said. "Unity only has about 200 people, right? How would enough traffic pass through to support a huge place like this, out in the middle of nowhere?" "But it's clearly here," I replied calmly. "Let's see if it's open. Maybe we'll find some answers about this road." With that, I got out of the car, keys in hand, and Naomi followed. I walked towards the sliding glass doors, not forgetting to cast a suspicious glance at the dusty car by the road. The way station, however, was spotless, without a single trace of dry leaves or dirt. The contrast between the dilapidated car and the pristine building made me uneasy. As I crossed the threshold, I saw Naomi pull her Glock from its holster, holding it in her hand but still pointing it at the floor. A chill ran down my spine. I gripped the switchblade in my pocket, wishing I had something heavier to defend myself with. Without a sound, the doors opened, revealing a brightly lit room inside. The shelves were packed with canned goods, bottled water, sodas, and personal hygiene items. A large banner hung from the ceiling with the words, "Welcome to Deathcap Trail," in red, handwritten style script. From the back of the room, I heard a faint sound, like light footsteps. "Is anyone here?" I called out from between 2 rows of shelves. A man appeared, making me instinctively recoil at his terrifying appearance. His eyes were sunken and deeply shadowed, his salt and pepper beard scraggly and down to his neck, his hair greasy and standing on end everywhere. His white t-shirt was torn and stained with dried blood. The worst was his body odor, a fermented blend of sweat, urine, feces, and grease, assaulting my nostrils from a distance. "Oh my God," he said, his voice trembling. "Are you people real?" He slowly walked closer to us. From my peripheral vision, I saw Naomi had her Glock out, but she still kept the barrel pointed at the floor. "Last I checked, still human," Naomi said with a faint smile. "Who are you?" But the man didn't seem to hear, continuing with his vacant, distant stare. "Have you heard them?" he asked, his voice hoarse as if about to crack. He looked over our shoulders towards the entrance. I also turned to look, but the light inside was too bright, making the outside a blurred, dark silhouette. "Heard what?" I asked, my anxiety growing. He gave me goosebumps and I just wanted to get out of there as fast as possible, but I also needed to know what he knew about this place and the mysterious road outside. Ignoring me, Naomi asked, "Sir, what's your name? I'm Naomi Payne and this is Jason. We're from the next town over and we just want to know what this place is." It was as if a switch flipped, his vacant, distant gaze vanished. He immediately focused on me with an intense look, like a soldier abandoned on a battlefield. "I'm Max Thuriot, and this place." He swallowed hard, his voice trembling. "To me, this is hell, young lady, pure hell." "I think we're all in hell," I said. Max's face paled, his skin visibly turning ashen. "There are things here that shouldn't exist in a normal world. I try to stay in this way station as long as possible, especially at night." "Is that your car outside?" Naomi asked. Max nodded gravely. "I've been stuck here for months. I was driving from Boise, Idaho to my brother's new house when I took a wrong turn onto this road called Deathcap Mountain Avenue. I wasn't too familiar with the area, but there certainly aren't any mountains called Deathcap nearby. After a few minutes of driving, I saw this way station. I came in to ask for directions, but no one was here, so I went back to my car and tried to turn around." "But you know what happened." We both shook our heads. "I drove back on the exact road I came from, a straight section with no turns, but then I ended up back here. I kept driving and kept ending up back here. Every few minutes, even if I was driving straight south, I'd end up back at this damned spot. So I tried driving north and the loop ended. I saw new scenery, new turns, but there seemed to be no exit, at least not a nearby one. And in these woods, there are things that are not human, nor like any animal I'd ever known. After encountering a few of them, I came back here, the safest place I knew, hoping someone would come to rescue me or I'd find an exit. You two are the first normal people I've seen." "This makes no sense whatsoever," I said. "We're definitely in Connecticut. We just turned onto this road in Unity. This place is thousands of miles from Idaho." "I don't think we're in Idaho or Connecticut, my friend," Max said. "I'm not even sure we're on Earth anymore." I saw Naomi roll her eyes. "Oh, extremely disorienting, but irrelevant," Naomi said sarcastically. "If we're on an alien planet, which I doubt, it doesn't solve the actual problem. No exit, eldritch monsters, a working car, a functional gun, limited gas, anything else I'm missing." Max chuckled for the first time, and for a moment, a part of his old self seemed to reawaken. His eyes focused on us instead of looking through us, and I saw the shadow of a younger man. He had once been quite handsome, tall and well-built with dark hair and pale blue eyes, but the months here had aged him, with dark circles under his eyes. "As for guns, you're wrong. Luckily, I have a few. After all, I'm from Idaho, and gun laws there are virtually non-existent if you're a law-abiding U.S. citizen with no felony record. In my car, I have a rifle, just a hunting rifle I use for target practice or small game. I also have a few boxes of ammo for it. Plus, I have a Mossberg 12 gauge with a few boxes of deer slugs and buckshot." Max looked around, a bit ashamed. "And I have a Stack Arms AR-15 with a laser sight and flashlight." He grinned and said, "Gotta love the good old US of A." "Then why aren't you carrying them?" Naomi asked, her eyes narrowed suspiciously. "I'm afraid to leave this place. If you saw what I've seen, you wouldn't be eager to go out there. The things in the woods don't seem to be able to enter here." Max shook his head. "I don't want to die." As if startled, Max lifted his head to the ceiling and repeated his nonsensical question from earlier. Have you heard it? I was about to answer when I suddenly heard a shrill, piercing sound echoed from outside. The crying, he said softly, and as if on cue, the wailing sound came again, a high-pitched, then low, hissing shriek that sounded like an infant crying. Oh my God, is that a baby? Naomi screamed, her voice high-pitched with alarm. The man in front of us shook his head violently. Don't go out there if you don't want to die, he said. That's no baby. I felt a strange urge to laugh at his grave tone and the sheer absurdity of the situation. A baby's cry, lost in the woods at night, and this bizarre road made me feel like I was in a dream. The absurdity of dreams often made me laugh when I woke up, or sometimes scream. I always thought both feelings came from the same hidden corner of the human mind. Is it a bobcat, I said, or a fox, or what? Not a bobcat, Naomi replied, glancing at me with an unreadable expression. I've heard bobcats many times in the woods behind my house growing up, and they don't sound like that. She pulled my arm, leading me away from the man and towards the door. She leaned close to my ear and whispered, Look, I think he might be mentally ill. A few wires loose, you know, and that's definitely a baby. We have to go out there and check if some sick person abandoned a child in the woods to die. She glanced at Max. I mean, we don't know anything about him. What if he's the one who dumped the baby out there? I'm not saying he definitely did, but he's the only one here who could have. I know, I said, though inwardly, I wanted to do anything but go outside. My stomach churned with anxiety, and at that exact moment, I felt the strangest thing yet. The room became slightly transparent, filled with shimmering, multicolored light that coated everything, and I could see Naomi's and Max's thoughts and emotions. I even saw their memories, as if I were watching a 4 million-inch television where I only needed to look at someone, and my vision would zoom in until I saw Max as a boy on a swing set or Naomi as a teenager crying at her grandfather's funeral. Then, as if reality had been shaken, it snapped back to normal, and I just stood there, staring blankly at Naomi. What? She asked. You look like you just saw a ghost. I shook my head, exasperated, half laughing, half crying. LSD hallucinations, huh? I joked. She chuckled softly. All right, I noticed something strange too. When I first got here, everything looked weird for a moment, like transparent and multicolored and fast-moving, but only for a moment, then it disappeared. The baby's cry shrieked again, and Naomi gestured for me to follow, saying, We'll talk about this later. First, we have to save that baby. The statement made me double over with laughter at its absurdity, the excited way she said it, and the sheer ludicrousness of the entire situation. I saw her laugh too. After our laughter subsided, I felt much better. Naomi went first, running out the door and into the woods. She crossed her arms over her chest, her right hand gripping her gun, her left holding a flashlight. I gripped my switchblade in my front pocket, my left hand readying my police-grade pepper spray, 3 fingers on the nozzle, ready to spray. But as soon as we stepped from the lawn surrounding the way station into the woods, the crying stopped abruptly. Is anyone out here? Naomi yelled, sweeping her flashlight from right to left, up into the branches, and down to the roots around our feet. We saw nothing. I'm armed, Naomi said in a calm voice. If there's anyone out there in the dark, please speak up. A piercing shriek echoed around us, similar to the previous crying, but now deeper and more prolonged. It sounded more like a whale's cry than a human's. Without warning, a pale figure emerged from behind a large tree, hurtling towards us at a horrifying speed. The shape resembled a woman moving on all fours in a grotesque backward crawl across the branches and decaying leaves on the ground. Her back was arched at an unnatural angle, and her inverted face was torn open with a smile so wide it looked like it was ripped at the sides of her cheeks. I had heard the phrase, grinning from ear to ear, but this woman literally was. Far too many rotten and sharp teeth protruded from every angle of her smile. Her mouth resembled a shark's, with teeth that seemed to extend endlessly. Her skin was so pale I could see the veins beneath, but these veins didn't seem to pump blood, instead, a thick, black liquid. Her eyes were completely white, with a faint darkness where pupils and irises should be, like she had cataracts or was blind. Yet her gaze was fixed on me. Stop right there, Naomi screamed, and I tried to back away but tripped over a root and fell backward. Naomi fired a shot, sending a stream of black liquid from the creature's chest, but it didn't slow down. It lunged forward faster than any human could, its teeth gnashing, leaving a trail of putrid slime on the ground. I flicked the assisted opening on my knife, and the blade sprang out. The creature leaped with horrifying speed and launched itself at me, its jaws wide like a rabid dog's. I plunged my knife into its chest as it tried to bite my face. I saw too many broken, jagged teeth for a normal human mouth. She seemed to have hundreds of teeth extending deep into a horribly distorted jaw, all oozing thick black blood. As I fell backward with the monster on top of me, I pulled the knife from its chest with a wet squelching sound, then stabbed repeatedly, blindly. The blade tore through her throat, stopping her from biting my face. With all my strength, I pushed the knife deeper until the hilt touched her pale skin. Disgusting black blood spilled onto my face, and I accidentally inhaled it into my nose and mouth. It tasted like rotten meat left out in the hot sun for days. I gagged and vomited a little in my mouth as it continued to bite, lowering its sharp teeth despite the pressure from the knife. With an agonizing, searing pain, I felt her tear off a piece of my left ear. I screamed as Naomi ran over, her gun pressed against the creature's stomach, and pulled the trigger. Its piercing scream rang out, deafening me, but it leaped off me and began to retreat. I grabbed my police pepper spray and sprayed it directly into her face. Though it didn't stop her from crawling backward on all fours, it seemed to blind her. She shrieked more violently and thrashed her head to escape the noxious chemicals. I sprayed again, longer this time, causing her to stop completely, writhing on the ground in intense pain. Unfortunately, some of the spray blew back into our faces due to a sudden gust of wind. Coughing and covering our faces, Naomi and I started running as fast as we could from the chemical-laden area. "Oh God, it burns," Naomi yelled, her eyes blurry and tears streaming down her face. We ran frantically back to the way station. I could still hear the grotesque woman shuffling behind, but she seemed disoriented, like a bumblebee that had just been sprayed with poison. Naomi hooked her arm through mine to try to keep her balance, and it also helped me navigate through the pain and blurry vision. "We need to find water to wash our faces immediately," I said. "We only got a small amount, just some residual spray blown back by the wind, but damn, this stuff is potent. I can't imagine what that monster felt like getting sprayed directly in the face for at least 5 or 6 seconds. The adrenaline surge then made me almost forget about my ear injury. Almost all my attention was focused on my eyes, which were screaming in my head with constant, stabbing pain. I tried to wipe my eyes with my shirt but tripped over a root, pulling Naomi down with me. We landed sprawling on the ground. I hit my head on a young elm tree, while Naomi narrowly avoided hitting hers on a large, moss-covered rock right next to me. I was dazed for a few seconds, but Naomi quickly pulled me up, and we continued running towards the light of the way station, now only about 100 feet away. I heard the creature's screams behind us, not far, urging us to run faster, and somewhere in the woods, I heard 2 more cries in response. "Oh my God, there are more," Naomi screamed. We burst into the building through the automatic doors and started piling tables, chairs, and newspaper stands across the main lobby to barricade the doors. Naomi also hit the emergency stop button so the doors wouldn't automatically open if someone was chasing us. With burning eyes and aching body, I staggered to the cooler, grabbed a bottle of spring water, and slowly poured it over my face to wash off the lingering chemicals from the pepper spray mix and blood. With a half smile that made him look years younger, Max pointed at Naomi and me. "How was the hunt?" We didn't even bother to respond to his sarcastic taunt. I heard a soft chuckle from Max. "Look, I tried to warn you too. You should have listened to me. You may think I'm crazy, but everything I've said is true." "Max, can those things get in here?" Naomi asked. "Have they ever tried to, at least?" Max shook his head, looking through the glass doors. 3 of the disgusting creatures were circling in front of the way station, performing that grotesque backward crawl at the edge of the parking lot. 2 of them looked like women, with long, matted black hair down to their waists, while the third appeared to be a man whose face seemed half melted, as if he'd been through a fire. Raised burn scars covered one eye, and strips of skin on his legs seemed to be missing, revealing black liquid dripping onto the pavement, mixing with the blood of the creature Naomi had shot. The creature that had been shot kept staggering and falling, black blood dripping onto the pavement, but it seemed that guns, knives, and pepper spray didn't affect it as much as I thought. If it were a normal human, one shot would likely have killed it, but this made me wonder, What exactly was it? Was it human, or had it once been human and now transformed into a monster? I've wondered if they can get in here, Max said. As far as I've seen, they avoid coming inside here or even getting too close to that door. He pointed to them, crawling near the edge of the parking lot, which was the closest I had ever seen them get. Good, I said. That means we can go back to the car and drive out of this godforsaken place. Grab a bag and put in water, snacks, especially things that curb hunger, peanut butter, almonds, trail mix, jerky, whatever they have. Max shook his head. Leaving here isn't that easy, kids, but I'll go with you just to try. I've tried walking back the way I came and got stuck in a strange loop. Max chuckled dryly. I don't think you can leave here unless the road allows it. All right then, let's try it, Naomi said, grabbing a bag and randomly tossing sports drinks and sodas from the cooler into it. I followed suit, and within a few minutes we were ready. We should use the restroom before we go, I said, looking at Max. You don't smell so great, my friend, no offense. If I were stuck here as long as you, I wouldn't smell like roses either. But maybe you should use the sink to clean up a bit. There's even deodorant and toothpaste here. Max nodded. I've tried to take sponge baths over the last few months, using wet wipes to clean myself, but with all the horror going on and the hopelessness of this situation, I think I gave up a long time ago. I just wander around this place, eat and sleep, barely aware of reality. Every time I sleep, I have such terrible nightmares that I can't even remember them. To be honest, I didn't think I'd ever see another normal person. Max looked at us with a distant look, a faint smile on his face. I'm glad you two came here, even if it doesn't help us escape this place. I really don't want to die alone, and at times I thought I was losing my mind. This place affects you in ways that are hard to explain. Creepy music starts playing whenever I try to sleep, and during the day, sometimes a man's voice comes on, talking about news from the road, like firestorm somewhere called Trinity Shore, or another man or woman on the road has died. I don't know how many people, I mean real people, not monsters, are still alive on this road, but based on those strange news reports, most of the living ones are deeper towards the mountains, and occasionally a few new ones appear, unless there are other entrances they bypass this way station. There could be thousands of entrances to this place, I said, or just one, I shrugged. Are you two ready? Max raised a finger and ran to the restroom. Once he was out of sight, Naomi leaned close to me. We spoke as we began to dismantle the barricade at the sliding glass doors, returning the tables and newspaper stands to their original spots. What do you really think of him? She asked me. I looked at her intently. She was the one with the photographic memory and a college degree in psychology. I thought I'd prefer to hear her opinion first. Despite working a manual labor job in a warehouse with a bunch of regular working-class folks, Naomi was one of the smartest people I'd ever met. When I asked her why she didn't use her degree, she just shrugged and said she made $60K a year here, listening to audiobooks and driving a forklift, and that she'd rather choose the devil you know than the devil you don't. That's what she always said. I think he's on the verge of some kind of mental collapse, Naomi said. He's been here alone for who knows how long, surrounded by monsters and God knows what else. Plus, she continued, lowering her voice, did you notice anything strange about this place? I rolled my eyes, trying to suppress a sarcastic remark. Everything here is strange, I affirmed. Okay, but I mean specifically this way station. He said he'd been here for months or more, but this place is still fully stocked with food and drinks. I don't even see any empty wrappers or anything. There's no sign that anyone has eaten most of the provisions. So does that mean he cleans the place? But even if that's the case, it doesn't explain why supplies are regularly replenished. My best guess. I never got to hear the rest of that idea, because at that moment, Max returned from the restroom. His face was still shiny from a quick scrub. He smelled much better, having clearly used deodorant before spraying himself with car air freshener. He literally smelled like a new car, and the scent was a bit overpowering. Seeing me grimace, he said, "A bit too much, right? Don't worry, it's fine." Naomi said, "Let's go." She pulled the emergency stop button back out so the sliding doors would open automatically. Our car was parked only about 20 feet away, and the disgusting creatures were still circling at the edge of the parking lot. As long as they couldn't or wouldn't get closer to the building, we could safely get in the car. I don't want to risk it, Naomi said. We'll run straight to the car, immediately close and lock all the doors. I don't know if those things will hunt us when we run outside. Nodding, Max and I scanned the darkness for anything we might have missed. Besides the 3 human-like creatures, we saw nothing else. On 3, I said. 1, 2, 3. All 3 of us bolted. The 3 human-like monsters turned their heads, staring at us with their opaque eyes, but they didn't move. Before I knew it, all 3 of us were in the car. Naomi was in the driver's seat and started the engine. I was in the passenger seat, and Max stretched out in the back seat. As soon as Naomi started the car and began to drive across the parking lot, the 3 crawling monsters immediately ran into the woods, dispersing in 3 different directions. By the time the car headlights illuminated the dirt road again, all signs of the 3 creatures had vanished behind the dense trees and thickets of the forest. I have a feeling this isn't the last time we'll see them, I said sadly. Max shook his head. The further down this road you go, the worse things get, Max replied. Then why don't you tell us everything you know about this road? I asked. Naomi and I just stumbled upon it, but you seem to know much more than we do. We want to hear everything you know. Naomi nodded in agreement. I'd also like to hear some information from you, Max. You gave us a summary of how you got here, but I think there's more to that story, she said, glancing at the back seat as she drove slowly along the dirt road. Max nodded, his face pensive. I guess so, Max said succinctly. The truth is, I sort of accidentally found this road while driving around Idaho, but the story starts before that. I used to work for the FBI after completing numerous top-secret missions in my military career. Actually, I guess I technically still work for the FBI, but they're probably wondering where I've been for the past few months missing or dead. I bet they just consider me another statistic now. We received reports of strange creatures, including some descriptions similar to the things we just saw in the woods, but there were also far more terrifying and dangerous monsters. We even found a piece of snakeskin that, if it were from a real snake, that snake would have to be over 30 meters long and weigh thousands of kilograms. How could anyone fake something like that? Crop circles are one thing, but creating a fake piece of snakeskin 20 or 30 times the length of a human body is an entirely different matter. But it wasn't just reports of monsters. There were also mysterious disappearances concentrated in several hotspots across the country. One of them was in Idaho, only about an hour's drive from my brother's new house. I was visiting him and his wife then, and one night, unable to sleep, I decided to drive out to see the area where many people were last reported missing. Right in the center of that area, I found this road, a road that wasn't on any map, not even in the FBI or national security databases. I brought some equipment to check a Geiger counter, an EMF detector, anything I could think of, but there was nothing abnormal. I didn't see anything strange either, certainly no bizarre crawling creatures or magic snakes. Otherwise, I would have left immediately. But something about the road ahead sent shivers down my spine. I felt goosebumps all over, so painful I wanted to vomit. Everything about that place felt wrong, and my body was telling me to turn back and leave while I had the chance, but I had never run away just because of a gut feeling, at least not before I came here. As Max told his story, Naomi continued to drive, weaving around potholes and fallen branches on the side of the road. I took the opportunity to scan the woods on either side for any signs of movement. A few times, I thought I saw flashes of silver light in the distance, but each time I focused on them, they vanished. Obviously, I didn't listen to my instincts. I got in my car and drove onto that road. It was the middle of the night then, around 3:45 a.m., when I got to the way station. As if he had conjured the building into this reality, the way station reappeared on our left. It was impossible. We had driven straight back towards the original road, but still ended up at the same spot. We saw the abandoned car and the bright fluorescent lights inside the building. Naomi sighed heavily. "Do you think this road only opens up at 3:33 a.m.?" she asked. "Maybe there's no way to connect to it except during the time this place opens up to the outside world, and it just keeps looping us around, but maybe when the road reconnects, it will stop and give us an exit." Max shook his head. "I've been trying to escape for weeks now. At first, I thought like you too that the road only connected at the time I entered. I've driven down the road at 3:30 a.m., 3:33 a.m., 3:45 a.m. I tried driving at noon, at sunrise, at sunset, whenever I could think of. Eventually, almost out of gas, I stopped trying. And every time, I always returned to the way station. Sometimes I went in the opposite direction, but that place was even more horrifying and only led deeper into this nightmare. The worst was seeing human body parts, sometimes just a leg, sometimes a hand or foot nailed to a tree. Some people were crucified on trees along the road, and others impaled. All were dead, and some were just skeletons. At night, there were things with silver eyes wandering around. They were almost human, like naked, 10-foot-tall figures with taut, pale skin like moonlight. Their arms were abnormally long, reaching below their knees. But the truly terrifying thing was that they could run faster than my car, at least on these dirt roads. When I saw a few of them blocking the road, I immediately turned my car around and drove back towards the way station. They chased me almost the entire way, smashing the roof and windows. I lost sight of them when I pulled into the parking lot, but I ran into the center's bathroom and barricaded the door with chairs and anything I could find. When I came out the next morning, someone or something had slashed my tires, and that was the end of my car. Anyway, I was almost out of gas, so it didn't matter much then. Every time I woke up in the way station, all the trash I left disappeared, muddy footprints were cleaned, and food and drinks were restocked. Even the restrooms were cleaned, but no one was ever there. I woke up in the middle of the night and searched for these hidden workers but found nothing. Maybe it's some automatic process, but I think it's more like the magic that sustains this road. It seems to reset and clean the building for some strange reason. Now we were parked in front of the building, just sitting in the car thinking. Max lit a cigarette in the back seat. I pulled out my phone and checked the time, 4:49 a.m. All of this had happened in just over an hour. It felt like much longer to me. Then I noticed something strange with my phone. Even though there was no signal, the screen still displayed, emergency calls only. I shrugged, thinking it couldn't hurt to try. I opened the browser and was surprised to find an unlocked way station Wi-Fi connection. I could open Google, Reddit, and other sites, though I still couldn't text or call my family. It says emergency calls only, I told Naomi and Max. I'll try to see if I can call for help. I don't think it will work, though. But Max shook his head. I wouldn't do that if I were you, he said softly, but it was too late. I had already dialed 911 and pressed call. The phone started ringing. Connecting, I whispered, covering the microphone. On the third ring, someone picked up. This is Deathcap County Emergency Services. A low, guttural voice echoed from the other end. What is your emergency? Thank God you answered. I began speaking quickly, my heart pounding in my chest. My two friends and I are stuck on a remote road in an area with a way station building, but there's no one else. We've tried to get out of here, but I think we're lost. Can you send someone to help us? There are strange people here, and I think they're very dangerous. They're definitely crazy. The other end was silent for a long moment. Sir, what is your current location? The voice asked, deeper as it spoke. The way station, I replied. Please stay there. Help is on the way. The voice on the other end began to drawl and slow down at the end of the call, to the point where it sounded deep and drawn out, more like a machine than a human voice. Then the call was cut off. How did it go? Naomi asked, looking at me with raised eyebrows, her purple hair shining under the light from the way station. They said help is coming, but the voice, I started. The voice sounded like it had been manipulated by voice-changing software, or maybe it was just a computer. I wasn't sure if it was a real dispatcher. By the end, it sounded almost demonic. Behind me, Max shook his head. I told you not to do that, he said softly. I have a really bad feeling about this. I'm going to get the guns from the car. Turning to me, he asked, do you know how to use a gun? I've target practiced a few times, but generally not much, I shrugged. I'm okay. Max took the keys from his pocket, opened the trunk, and began loading the guns. You, he said, pointing at me, will use the Mossberg 12 gauge, a shotgun with a wide spread, so you don't need to aim too precisely, at least with buckshot or birdshot. I'll load it with buckshot and give you some extra ammo to carry. What about you? I asked. He looked at me as if I had asked something foolish. The AR-15, of course. It's my favorite gun, especially in a survival situation. This baby will tear a monster apart before it even gets close. He looked at Naomi. Do you want to use the .22 rifle? You can holster your pistol and save it for emergencies, but I have hundreds of rounds for this .22. I assume you don't carry more than a few spare magazines for your Glock. Naomi smiled warmly as she took the rifle, holstering her pistol in her leg holster with an extra magazine next to it. In the distance, we saw flashing red and blue lights. The lights spun through the branches and above the tree line, even illuminating the sky with vibrant colors. Without a word, all three of us stepped into the way station. A gut feeling told me not to be outside, that barricading a building would be far easier than fighting in an open parking lot. A minute later, a police cruiser pulled into the parking lot, its headlights searching and shining on Max's black Ford Taurus, the walls of the building, the forest behind, and finally, stopping on the road they had just come down. After checking every corner with their headlights, I saw two uniformed police officers step out of the car. Both carried guns and walked straight towards the sliding glass doors of the entrance. The dazzling headlights, combined with the flashing lights above, made it impossible for me to see anything but the silhouettes of the two armed men in uniform. I couldn't see their faces or their expressions. What should we do? Naomi whispered. Don't shoot no matter what. Actually, we should retreat to the back room to assess the situation, Max hissed. I have a feeling that leaving here won't be as easy as calling for help and being returned to civilization. Signaling with his head, he began walking quickly backward. Naomi and I followed closely. As we opened the back storage room door, behind the coolers, and peered out through a small round window, the two officers slowly walked through the automatic doors, guns pointed to either side. No one said a word, despite the constant hissing and crackling of the radios on their belts. And as they got closer, I understood why. Where there should have been a face, there was just a pristine white layer of skin. No eyes, no nose, no mouth, no ears. I could only tell the direction they were looking, if they could look at all, by watching their shiny black police hats. Their faces seemed to undulate as if they were breathing through their skin. That white skin rippled smoothly and unnaturally beneath their hats. What the hell is this? I hissed. Max shook his head next to me. They're not our friends, I'll guarantee that, Max said. Be ready to take them down. They're not on our side and will likely shoot on sight. Those things, whatever they are, belong to this road. But how do they see? How do they hear? How do they breathe? I don't understand, I began, but Max signaled for silence with a wave of his hand. Don't worry about those things, he said softly. The reality is that they can clearly see and probably hear. Otherwise, how would they have driven here? Don't underestimate them. They can be as dangerous as any normal person with a gun, even more so, for all we know. They're coming. Naomi whispered, Stay away from the window, everyone. All three of us crouched low around the door, pressing against the wall in a semicircle, guns aimed towards the door. I heard the footsteps of the two officers, their soft leather shoes approaching. Outside, I heard another vehicle approaching, the tires crunching on gravel, making me realize its presence. I think they have backup, I whispered. Max nodded. He gestured with his hand, telling us to hold steady and keep aiming at the round window. The two officers turned and walked out of the sliding glass doors. Two more officers, dressed in black riot gear, entered. They also had no faces, just a smooth layer of skin covering their skulls, no mouths, no eyes, no holes breaking the flat surface. These SWAT officers carried much heavier weapons than the pistols of the first two, along with tear gas or smoke grenades around their tactical belts. They could be a much greater threat in a gunfight. I think we need to use the element of surprise to take them all down, Max whispered to us in a low, calm voice. Aim for the two SWAT officers first, then the other two. The M1A1 rifles the tactical officers were carrying could easily shoot through walls, so we couldn't let them trap us in here. They could shoot through the doors and walls until we were all Swiss cheese. I slowly looked through the bottom part of the round window. The officer in front was rapidly gesturing with his hands, directing the other three how to split up and surround the building. One hand pointed towards the storage room door, unknowingly aiming directly at me, while the other gestured towards the restrooms and the emergency exit at the end of the hall. All right, let's do it. It's now or never, Max said, signaling for both of us to stand up, ready to fire. He kicked the door open and began firing huge .50 caliber rounds from his AR-15 into the faceless figures in the lobby. The element of surprise was on our side, so the battle was quick. Max's first shot blew apart the bulging head of the nearest tactical officer, while I fired buckshot into the other SWAT, both falling in a bloody splatter. The two remaining officers tried to retreat behind the rows of snack shelves, but Max continued to pepper the shelves with his AR-15, shredding them. We saw one regular officer try to run, but was cut down as Max and Naomi simultaneously aimed at his legs and torso. The remaining faceless cop crawled under fire, raising his gun to aim at us from his prone position on the floor. "Watch out!" I screamed, lunging back into the storage room. Gunshots rang out, along with a pained yell. I stood up, looked through the window, and saw blood streaming from Max's leg. "I got him," Naomi said, looking across the lobby. I saw a small bullet hole in the forehead of the officer whose legs were gone. He continued to crawl towards the door, but Naomi quickly stepped forward and fired a shot into the back of his head. He immediately went still, a pool of blood rapidly spreading around him, brain fragments and skull shards glistening under the harsh fluorescent lights of the way station. "So they're all dead," I gasped. The adrenaline rush made me feel dizzy, the lights became too blinding. I just wanted to lie down somewhere dark and rest, but the current circumstances didn't allow it. "Now what?" Max said, gasping for breath next to me. "We have to leave here," Max said. "I mean, we have to get off this road. If we can't go back the way we came, then we have to go forward until we find an exit or at least meet someone who knows more. There has to be an exit at that end, right?" I just looked out the sliding glass doors, dreading the answer to that question. "No, first we need to bandage both of you," Naomi said. "Jason lost part of his ear, and Max has blood streaming from his leg." Max waved away her concern. "It's just a graze," he said. "Didn't hit bone, just grazed it a bit." "We still have to clean and bandage you both," she said. "The last thing we need is an infection when we're cut off from the outside world. Even if there's a hospital on this road, I'm sure the doctors there would just operate on you while you're alive without anesthesia, instead of bandaging your wound." After we cleaned our wounds with the first aid kit and filled the car with snacks and water, the three of us discussed the next step of the plan. I felt nauseous and dizzy, so I sat down on a chair inside the way station. "We need to move forward," Naomi said. "If we can't go back, then we have to keep going and hope to find an exit or at least more information. There must be other people on this road, maybe even a whole community living somewhere. Who knows?" "You don't understand what awaits us ahead," Max said. "The things we've faced so far are child's play compared to the horrific monsters waiting as we get closer to the mountains." "But what other choice do we have?" I asked softly, rubbing my aching forehead. A migraine began to creep in as I sat there, and the lights suddenly became blinding. Abruptly, I felt that strange sensation I had experienced earlier in the night. The building around me shimmered and then blurred. I could see through the walls into the forest, which also became blurry and dark in a similar way. The spot where Naomi and Max sat was filled with dazzling white light, and when I looked into it, I once again saw their thoughts, emotions, and pasts. I saw Naomi's determination to survive and get out of here, a hint of bitterness in her as she blamed me for dragging her into this in the first place, and fragments of her childhood memories. I saw her and her family rescuing their first dog, saw her as a child standing at her half-brother's funeral, who had been hit by a car and died after a week in a coma, along with thousands of other fleeting images accompanied by that radiant light. It all happened in a fraction of a second. Then suddenly I was back in reality, sitting on the chair, breathing heavily. "Did you feel that?" Naomi said, her voice breathless, her eyes wide with dilated pupils. "It was like everything melted and then was replaced by white light, huh?" I asked. She nodded, saying nothing. Max just stood there, stunned, looking around. The stoic agent demeanor he usually displayed finally broke under the sheer strangeness of this road, but he quickly regained his composure. "This isn't the first time I've experienced that," Max said, "but every time it disorients me. I don't know if it's because the water here contains some kind of stimulant, or if it's a residual effect from us existing in an alternative form of matter, but don't let it bother you. If there are entities behind this madness, they're probably trying to distract us and prevent us from escaping." I nodded, Max paused for a moment, looking distantly and thoughtfully before sighing. "I'll write down what happened and post it online before we go anywhere," I said. "I doubt I'll be able to maintain a consistent internet connection throughout this journey." We all agreed to take a short break to relax while I wrote and posted the update. "If you don't hear from me again, it means we didn't make it out." I woke up a few hours later to Max and Naomi standing over me. The air around the car was cold. I looked around and quickly realized I was still in the back room of the way station. The door was ajar, allowing a view of the sliding glass doors in front. Everything seemed normal, though someone had definitely cleaned the floor. It looked spotless, even freshly mopped. "What time is it?" I asked, my voice hoarse. 6 a.m., Max replied. I looked out the front window in surprise. "Then why is it still pitch black out?" They looked at each other and shrugged. I stood up, my back cracked as I did so, my body sore and aching. I felt cold and uncomfortable, and most of all, I just wanted to go home and end all this trouble. My curiosity had been satisfied forever. "All right, let's go," Naomi said, gesturing towards my small Toyota. Good thing we still have nearly a full tank of gas. I wasn't keen on walking 70.9 miles or more. We crammed into the car. Naomi drove, I sat in the front passenger seat, and Max stretched out in the back, all of us with guns at the ready. But for a long time, the road remained deserted. I felt like we were being watched, but saw nothing beyond fleeting glimmers of eyes from the forest. A few times, a fox or deer darted in front of the car. Naomi braked sharply to let them pass. Still, the sun didn't rise. Due to the constant potholes and dense trees on either side of the dirt road, our speed was quite slow. After a few hours of driving at 15 to 20 miles per hour, we stopped to eat. There was a small dirt turnaround on the side of the road that we pulled into, then turned off the headlights and engine. Initially, all we heard was the popping and pinging of the cooling engine. Far behind us, we heard the screams of the monstrous creatures we had first encountered, and moments later, a full chorus of replies from all around. Max passed us peanut butter crackers and bottled sweet tea from the supplies in the back seat. For a long time, all three of us ate in silence. "How far have you gone down this road, Max?" Naomi suddenly asked. Her question startled me in the darkness, and I instinctively tightened my fingers around the gun's trigger. Luckily, I had the safety on, so there was no risk of blowing out the windshield or shooting through the engine. "I've gone a little further than this," Max replied softly. "Up ahead, there will be a few cabins on the left, all painted dark red. This journey with you two is much easier than when I traveled alone. I only hope our luck doesn't run out." After eating, we slowly continued driving, and as Max said, about 20 minutes later, our headlights illuminated a dark red cabin on the left. Its screen door was open, swaying in the gentle breeze. Further in the woods behind the cabin, we saw another cabin with smashed windows, a broken generator lying behind it. 50 feet further, we saw the last in the series, a burnt-out shell, only its charred black framework remaining. "It didn't used to be like this," Max said, pointing at the cabin's black, burnt wreckage. "Doesn't matter," I said. "We're not staying here anyway." But Naomi stopped the car and turned.